kind of father. No kid should be around. I ran out the courthouse when I saw my ex-husband Shane waiting by my car with our kids. Emery, our 6-year-old, immediately went silent when he saw us together. Melanie, 8, grabbed my hand so tight it hurt. Shane handed them over with that fake smile he used for public spaces. Tell mommy how much fun we had this weekend. Emery stared at the ground, wouldn't speak. Shane pulled me aside while the kids sat on the courthouse steps. He opened an envelope showing me $50,000 in cash. This is yours if you tell the judge I'm a good father at next week's hearing. I stared at the money. There's more where that came from. Lots more. Just say the kids are thriving with me. Emery was watching us from the steps, completely frozen. That's all you have to do. A week later, we were in family court. Shane's lawyer was painting him as Father of the Year, showing NA meeting attendance records that I knew were forged. Shane slipped me a note under the table. Another $50,000 after this. Emery sat in the children's area, visible through the glass partition, holding new Pokemon cards. Melanie told the court advocate she was scared but wouldn't say why. When the judge asked about Shane's parenting, he mouthed, "Remember the money," from across the courtroom. I started my testimony about the visitation schedule, keeping it neutral. Then Melanie burst into the courtroom crying, "I don't want to go back to Daddy's. Please don't make me." The judge called a recess to speak with her privately. Shane cornered me in the hallway. "Control your daughter, or you'll regret it." Emery still wouldn't speak to anyone, just kept shuffling his Pokemon cards. When court reconvened, Melanie was too upset to continue. The judge seemed concerned but said she needed more evidence. She ordered a continuation for next month. 4 weeks later, we were back in the same courtroom. Shane slipped another envelope to me as we walked in. "Last chance. Take it or I'll destroy you in there." Emery saw the exchange and started shaking. The judge called me back to the witness stand. "Has Mr. Peterson maintained his sobriety during visits?" I looked at Emery, tears streaming down his face silently. "No. He's been using around the children." I pulled out both envelopes. "And he's been trying to bribe me. $50,000 to lie to you." Shane jumped up. "That's complete bullshit. She's setting me up." The judge ordered him to sit, demanded an immediate drug test. Shane's lawyer objected frantically. Melanie told the judge about Daddy's medicine friends who came to the apartment, but Emery remained completely mute. The judge looked frustrated without the younger child's testimony. Shane's lawyer argued I was coaching the children. The boy's silence proves he's being manipulated. He won't speak against his mother's lies. The case was falling apart. The judge started talking about maintaining split custody. That's when Emery stood up in the waiting area. He walked into the courtroom on his own, carrying a box. He dumped hundreds of Pokemon cards onto the floor. 1 pack for every day I stayed quiet. His voice was tiny but clear. "Daddy said bad things happen to kids who tell." The judge leaned forward. "Tell what, Emery?" "The drugs, the hitting, the scary people who come over." Emery's hands were shaking. "And the lady who stopped moving." The entire courtroom went silent. Sunday night. She was screaming in Daddy's room. Then she got quiet. Really quiet. Emery started crying. Daddy and his friend rolled her up in a rug, put her in the blue dumpster behind his building. Everyone sat frozen. He said if I told anyone I'd be next, or Mommy would disappear. Shane lunged across the courtroom. "You lying little shit, I'll kill you!" The bailiffs tackled him. He kept screaming. "He's lying! Check his head! He makes things up!" Dozens of police cars sped past us toward Shane's apartment complex. My phone rang. It was the detective. "We need you to bring Emery to the station. K9 units found something." I buckle Emery into his car seat and his fingers won't let go of that Pokemon card box. The drive to the police station takes 15 minutes through downtown traffic, and I keep checking the rearview mirror to see his face. He stares out the window at nothing, his mouth pressed into a thin line. I try to think of something to say, but every word feels wrong. My phone buzzes twice with texts I don't read. We pull into the precinct parking lot, and I have to carry the box because Emery's hands are shaking too much to hold it. Inside the building smells like coffee and cleaning products. A woman with short brown hair and kind eyes meets us in the lobby. She crouches down to Emery's level and introduces herself as Christina Pierce. She explains she talks to kids about hard things and that she has a special room just for children. Emery looks at me and I nod, even though every part of me wants to grab him and run. Christina asks me to wait in a different area because kids share more when parents aren't watching. I sign papers on a clipboard with my hand shaking so bad the pen keeps slipping. The consent forms have words like forensic interview and recorded testimony that make everything feel too real. A uniformed officer leads me down a hallway to a small room with chairs and a coffee maker. Christina spends 30 minutes explaining how the interview works before she even takes Emery into the room. She tells me about neutral questions and how she won't put words in his mouth. She says Emery can stop anytime he wants and that toys are available but not required. Everything gets recorded on video for court later. She shows me the one-way window where I can watch, but they can't see me. The interview room is painted soft blue with a couch and building blocks scattered on a low table. Christina leads Emery inside and he sits on the floor in the corner. His voice comes through a speaker so quiet I have to lean forward to hear. He describes the rug and how the screaming stopped and watching Daddy and another man carry something heavy down the stairs. Christina asks him to draw what he saw and he picks up a crayon with trembling fingers. The blue dumpster he draws has careful detail showing where it sits behind the apartment building. She never pushes or suggests answers, just follows where his words lead with gentle questions. Tears run down my face, but I stay silent in the observation room. After 40 minutes, Christina thanks Emery and brings him back to me. A detective named Williams asks me to hand over both envelopes of cash that Shane gave me. I pull them from my purse where they've been sitting like weights for weeks. The detective photographs each bill on a light table and writes down serial numbers in a notebook. He seals everything in plastic evidence bags with red tape and labels. I provide a written statement about the bribery attempts and sign my name at the bottom. The money that tempted me during those desperate weeks becomes proof of Shane's crimes. Williams drives me to see a magistrate that same evening in an unmarked car. The magistrate's office is in a government building that stays open late for emergencies. I explain the threats Shane made in the courthouse hallway and how he's intimidated me for months. The magistrate reads through a summary of Emery's statement with a serious expression. She types on her computer and prints out an emergency protective order that includes GPS monitoring if Shane makes bail. The next morning, I wake up at 5 and call Melanie's school before she even opens her eyes. I speak quietly in the bathroom with the door closed so she won't hear. The school counselor listens as I explain what happened in court and asks them to watch for any signs Shane tries to contact her. They agree to flag her file and create a safety plan with code words and a restricted visitor list. 2 days later, a CPS caseworker named Jack Babb knocks on our apartment door for a home visit. He checks that we have food in the cabinets and asks about where the kids sleep. He reviews my safety plan for keeping Shane away and takes notes on a tablet. Having a stranger inspect our modest home makes me feel exposed and judged. Jack is professional and kind, though, noting in his report that the kids seem bonded to me. Shane's bail hearing happens within 72 hours of his arrest. I sit in the courtroom watching him appear in an orange jumpsuit looking unwashed and angry. Lawrence Finch, the assistant DA, argues that Shane poses a flight risk and a danger to witnesses. He presents the bribery evidence and the threats Shane made in the courthouse hallway. Shane's lawyer, Dinah Cleary, claims he's a devoted father being railroaded by false accusations from a bitter ex-wife. She argues the children's statements are unreliable and that Shane has strong community ties. The judge sets bail at $200,000, but imposes strict conditions. No contact with me or the children, GPS ankle monitor, twice weekly drug testing, and surrender of his passport. Shane's parents post bail that same afternoon using their house as collateral. My stomach drops when Williams texts me that Shane is being released. At least the GPS monitor means police can track if he comes near us. The next morning, I drive to the courthouse before the kids wake up and fill out an emergency motion to suspend Shane's visitation rights. My hands shake so bad I mess up the first form and have to start over with a fresh copy. The clerk at the help desk walks me through each section because I can't afford a lawyer to do this for me. She explains the hearing will take about a week to schedule, and I nod even though a week feels like forever when Shane is out there with just a GPS monitor between him and us. I sign my name at the bottom and hand over the filing fee from money I was saving for Melanie's birthday. Walking back to my car, I pray a week is soon enough. 2 days later, I take Melanie to the Child Advocacy Center where a woman named Harper Lee meets us in the waiting room. Harper has a soft voice and wears a cardigan with cats on it that makes Melanie smile a little. She explains she's a therapist who helps kids talk about hard things and that they'll use some toys and art supplies together. I watch through the one-way glass as Harper spreads out puppets and markers on a low table. Melanie picks up a brown bear puppet and makes it walk across the table while Harper asks gentle questions about Daddy's apartment. Melanie describes seeing scary people who smelled like smoke and talked really loud. She draws a picture of the apartment with dark scribbles in one corner. Harper never pushes or suggests answers, just follows where Melanie's words go. When Harper asks if Melanie saw the lady who stopped moving, Melanie shakes her head and says she was in the other room with Emery watching cartoons really loud. The interview lasts 40 minutes, and when it's done, Melanie seems tired but not broken. Harper's gentle approach helped her share without falling apart completely. That night after the kids go to bed, I notice dark purple bruises on my forearm in the bathroom mirror. I stare at them trying to remember when they happened, and realize it was from Shane grabbing me during custody exchanges over the past few months. His fingers left perfect oval marks on my skin. I take photos with my phone from different angles, making sure the bruises show up clear. The next morning, I email the pictures to Jack Babb with a short message explaining when Shane grabbed me. Looking at those photos on my computer screen makes me angry at myself for letting his rough handling become normal. I should have documented this months ago, but I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad. My phone buzzes with a text from Detective Williams saying they're executing a search warrant on Shane's apartment right now. I sit on my couch refreshing my messages every few minutes, waiting for updates. Williams texts that they found camera equipment in the bedroom closet and notebooks with names and dollar amounts written inside. Another text says they're bagging drug paraphernalia from under the bathroom sink. The search takes 6 hours while Shane has to wait outside with his lawyer Dinah Cleary, who objects to everything the officers touch. Williams sends a final text saying they documented every room with photos and took boxes of evidence. I save all his messages in a folder on my phone. I spend the whole next afternoon changing the locks on our apartment door. The hardware store guy showed me how to install them, and I work carefully following his instructions. I set up a code word with both kids for emergencies, telling them if anyone tries to pick them up, they need to ask for the word first. We practice it 3 times until they have it memorized. I make a list of trusted contacts they can call and tape it inside their bedroom closet, where only they know to look. Emery watches me install a chain lock on the front door and asks in his tiny voice if Daddy can still get in. I promise him no, even though fear sits heavy in my chest, because I know locks are just metal, and Shane is determined. Harper Lee calls that evening and says she wants to take both children as clients for something called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. She explains the treatment will help them process what they saw and give them tools for handling anxiety and nightmares. The sessions will be twice a week, and she already checked that our Medicaid covers mental health services. I feel grateful we can access this help even as I worry about fitting 2 appointments per week into our already packed schedule. Harper emails me intake paperwork to fill out, and I spend an hour answering questions about the kids' sleep patterns, eating habits, and behavior changes. Detective Williams calls 2 days later with an update that makes my whole body go cold. The K-9 unit alerted on the exact dumpster location Emery described, and forensic teams found trace evidence including carpet fibers and biological material. He can't tell me everything because the investigation is ongoing, but his serious tone suggests they're building a major case. I hang up and walk straight to the bathroom where I sit on the floor trying not to throw up. My 6-year-old son witnessed something real and terrible, and now there's physical proof. At our first therapy session, Harper sits with me alone for 20 minutes before bringing the kids in. She explains trauma-focused CBT using simple words about gradual exposure and building skills to manage big feelings. She sets clear rules about what the kids should talk about at home versus in therapy, so we don't accidentally make things worse. I learned that my job is to be patient with their slow healing and not push them to share details or get better faster than they're ready for. Harper gives me a handout about supporting traumatized children, and I read it 3 times that night. Jack Babb shows up for a follow-up CPS visit the next week and walks through our apartment with a clipboard. He checks the medicine cabinet to make sure pills are stored safely and looks at our fire extinguisher and emergency exits. He reviews the safety plan I created and asks me to sign paperwork saying I understand my responsibility to keep Shane away from the children. Having a stranger inspect our home makes me feel exposed and judged, but I understand they need to verify I can protect my kids. Jack's report will go to the family court judge deciding our custody case. A woman named Lucia Warren knocks on our door 3 days later and introduces herself as the guardian ad litem appointed by family court. She explains she represents the children's best interests separately from either parent and will observe them, review records, and make recommendations to the judge. Lucia has kind eyes and asks permission before sitting on our couch. She watches the kids play with blocks and asks them gentle questions about school and their favorite foods. I'm cautiously hopeful that another adult advocate will see the truth of what we've been living through and help protect them. 2 days after Lucia's visit, I drive to the prosecutor's office downtown for my meeting with Lawrence Finch. The building smells like old coffee and copy paper, and I wait 20 minutes in a plastic chair before his assistant calls me back. Lawrence sits behind a desk covered in folders and legal pads, and he shakes my hand before gesturing to a chair across from him. He opens a thick file with Shane's name on the tab and starts going through potential charges one by one. Evidence tampering because of the dumpster situation. Child endangerment for exposing Emery and Melanie to drugs and dangerous people. Witness intimidation from the bribery attempts with those cash envelopes. Lawrence's voice stays calm and professional as he explains each charge, but then he leans back in his chair and his tone shifts. He tells me honestly that Emery's testimony alone isn't enough to convict Shane of the serious charges. They need physical proof to back up what my 6-year-old son described. The forensic team is still processing evidence from Shane's apartment and car, but it takes weeks to get lab results back. Lawrence says cases like this often come down to what they can prove beyond reasonable doubt, not just what actually happened. I leave his office feeling heavy and tired, walking back to my car in the parking garage while running through everything he said. The legal system moves slowly and needs concrete evidence, and there are no guarantees even with everything we've been through. My phone rings while I'm driving home and I see it's my boss calling. I pull into a gas station parking lot to take the call because I can't handle this conversation while navigating traffic. She asks when I can return to work, her voice sympathetic but firm. I explain about all the court hearings coming up, the therapy appointments twice a week for both kids, the CPS visits, and meetings with lawyers. I request unpaid leave to handle everything piling up on my calendar. My boss sighs and says she understands but warns me that extended absence could put my position at risk. The company has policies about leave time and they can only hold my job for so long. After we hang up, I sit in my car doing math in my head. Rent is $900 a month. Groceries run about $300. The therapy copays are $20 per session, so $80 a week for both kids. Gas money for driving to appointments. My emergency fund has maybe $800 left in it. The bribery money Shane offered would have solved everything, paid bills for months, and given us breathing room. That thought makes my stomach turn, and I feel sick with myself for even considering it now. I start the car and drive home, trying to push away the anxiety about money on top of everything else we're dealing with. Harper schedules our next therapy session for Thursday afternoon, and I bring both kids to her office. The waiting room has toys and books, and Emery immediately goes to the Pokemon cards while Melanie picks up crayons. Harper brings Melanie back first for her individual session, leaving me with Emery in the waiting area. 40 minutes later, Harper opens the door and Melanie walks out carrying a piece of paper. I can see it's a drawing before Melanie even shows me. Blue rectangle with black lines. The dumpster. My chest gets tight and I feel my breathing speed up, but Harper catches my eye and shakes her head slightly. She asks if we can talk for a minute while the kids play, and she leads me to a corner of the waiting room. Harper explains in a quiet voice that Melanie drew the picture without being asked, just picked up a blue crayon and started drawing it. She says this is actually good because it means Melanie is processing the trauma through art. Then Harper teaches me how to respond when the kids share scary things. She demonstrates using a calm, neutral voice to say things like, "That must have been scary for you," instead of crying or showing anger. The goal is to acknowledge their feelings without adding my own panic to their load. We practice a few responses together, Harper playing Melanie and me practicing my reactions. It feels awkward and scripted, but I understand why it matters. The kids need to feel safe sharing without worrying about upsetting me. Jack Babb calls me the next morning with an update about Shane's CPS interview. Shane's lawyer Dinah arranged for him to be interviewed at her office with her present the whole time. Jack explains that Shane spent 2 hours blaming me for everything, claiming I coached the children to make false allegations so I could win custody. Shane denied all drug use and said Emery's story about the woman in the dumpster is pure fantasy, something a traumatized kid made up. He told Jack that I'm manipulating the children against him and using the court system as a weapon. Jack's voice stays neutral and professional as he recounts Shane's statements, and he assures me that he's documenting everything Shane said. The predictable denial makes me angry, sitting at my kitchen table with my phone pressed to my ear while the kids watch cartoons in the living room. Of course, Shane is lying and playing victim. That's what he's always done. But Jack's careful documentation gives me some confidence that the system will see through Shane's lies. CPS has seen this pattern before with manipulative parents. Detective Williams calls 3 days later with news about the forensic analysis of Shane's apartment. The team found those NA meeting attendance sheets that Shane's lawyer showed in court, and they discovered forged signatures on multiple forms. The supposed sponsor whose name appears on the documents admitted under questioning that Shane pressured him to sign backdated forms. Shane was lying to the family court about maintaining sobriety, faking his recovery program attendance while still using drugs around our children. Detective Williams explains that this evidence proves Shane was actively deceiving the court, which strengthens the witness intimidation charges. It's a small piece of the bigger puzzle, but it matters. Every lie they can document helps build the case that Shane is dangerous and dishonest. I thank the detective and hang up, feeling a tiny bit of vindication that at least this one deception has been exposed. Lucia Warren comes back to our apartment the following week to observe the kids during dinner and bedtime routine. She arrives at 5:30 and sits quietly in the corner of our small kitchen, while I cook pasta and heat up sauce. Emery stays completely silent through dinner, eating his noodles without making eye contact with anyone. Melanie chatters nervously about school and her teacher and a book she's reading, filling the silence that Emery leaves. I notice Lucia taking notes in a small notebook, her pen moving steadily as she watches how we interact. After dinner, I start the bedtime routine, helping the kids brush teeth and pick out pajamas. A door closes somewhere in the building and Emery jumps so hard he drops his toothbrush. Lucia sees it and writes something down. She asks gentle questions about their daily routine, what they like to do after school, how they're sleeping at night. Her careful attention makes me feel like someone official is finally witnessing what we live with every day. The constant vigilance, Emery's frozen silence, Melanie's nervous energy trying to compensate. Lucia doesn't judge or criticize, just observes and documents with professional kindness. My phone rings while I'm washing dishes that evening, and it's Detective Williams again. He has preliminary lab results from the forensic team, and his voice sounds serious. The fibers found in Shane's car trunk are consistent with carpet material, and there are trace amounts of biological material being analyzed by the lab. Full DNA results take several more weeks to process, but the evidence is building piece by piece. Detective Williams cautions me not to get ahead of the investigation, but I can hear in his tone that they're finding what they need. I hang up and stand at the sink with my hands in soapy water, feeling a sinking certainty in my stomach. My children witnessed something real and terrible, and now science is backing up Emery's story. I want to believe the legal system will work, and Shane will face consequences, but Lawrence Finch's warnings about evidence gaps echo in my head. The next morning, I wake up to an email from my HR representative. The subject line says, "Leave status update," and my stomach drops before I even open it. She writes that prolonged unpaid leave may put my position at risk per company policy, but she wants to explore options that might work for both of us. She suggests returning part-time, maybe 20 hours a week on a flexible schedule that accommodates my court dates and appointments. I'm grateful for any accommodation, even as I feel pressure squeezing me from every direction. I spend an hour at the kitchen table creating a color-coded calendar on graph paper. Blue for therapy sessions, red for court dates, green for CPS meetings, purple for work shifts. I try to fit everything into a schedule that's actually possible, moving blocks around and erasing and redrawing until my hand cramps. The calendar looks like a complicated puzzle, and I'm not sure all the pieces actually fit together. 2 weeks after Shane's bail was set, his lawyer files a motion requesting supervised visitation at a neutral facility. I get a copy in the mail and read it with shaking hands. Dinah argues that Shane deserves contact with his children pending the criminal investigation, that maintaining the parent-child relationship is important even during legal proceedings. Lawrence Finch files an opposition within days, arguing that supervised visitation is inappropriate while Shane faces serious criminal charges related to endangering those same children. The family court judge schedules a hearing to consider the motion. I sit in the courtroom again, this time without the kids present, while both lawyers make their arguments. The judge listens carefully and reviews the pending charges, the CPS reports, and Harper's therapy notes. After 20 minutes of consideration, she denies Shane's motion without prejudice. That means he can ask again later, but not right now. I exhale with relief that feels temporary because I know Shane won't stop fighting. He'll keep filing motions and demanding contact, using every legal tool available to maintain control. I use money from my emergency fund to buy a doorbell camera from the hardware store. The box says it's easy to install, and I follow the instructions carefully, mounting it next to our front door and connecting it to my phone. I show both kids how it works, how we can see who's at the door before opening it, how it records video if anyone approaches. Emery watches the demonstration with wide eyes and asks if it will show us if Daddy comes. I promise him yes. We'll know if Shane gets anywhere near our building. Our neighbors, an older couple named the Johnsons who live across the hall, notice me installing the camera. They ask if everything is okay, and I give them a brief explanation about needing extra security. They immediately offer to call police if they see Shane's car in the parking lot or near the building. I give them my phone number and Shane's license plate number, and they promise to watch out for us. Building this network of protection helps me feel less alone, even though I'm still constantly checking the doorbell camera feed and startling at unexpected sounds. The vigilance never stops, but at least now I have backup and documentation if Shane violates the protective order. 3 days later, I sit in Harper's therapy office watching Emery arrange colored blocks on the carpet, while she asks him questions in that gentle voice she uses. He picks up a blue block and turns it over in his hands, then whispers something I can't quite hear from my chair by the door. Harper leans closer and Emery says it again, louder this time. He counted 1 Pokemon pack for every day he stayed quiet, just like Daddy told him to. Harper nods and pulls out a sheet of star stickers from her desk drawer. She explains a new system where Emery gets a sticker every time he uses his voice to tell anyone anything, not just scary things. He can earn stickers for saying what he wants for lunch, or asking for help with homework, or telling me good morning. Emery's eyes light up at the sticker sheet and he picks a gold star, pressing it carefully onto a chart Harper made with his name at the top. It's the first time I've seen him want to earn something good, instead of just trying to avoid something bad. The change in his face makes my chest tight, but I keep my expression calm like Harper taught me. Later that week, Jack Babb calls and asks me to come to a CPS case conference at their downtown office. When I arrive, Lucia Warren is already there with her folders spread across the table, and Harper shows up 5 minutes after me carrying her therapy notes. We sit in a small conference room with harsh lights, and Jack goes through his checklist of safety items, marking things off as we discuss our living situation and the protective order. Lucia shares her observations about the kids and asks Harper specific questions about their progress in therapy. Harper explains Emery's selective mutism is improving slowly, and Melanie's panic attacks are less frequent now that she has coping tools. Everyone talks in this professional language that somehow makes our situation feel less overwhelming, like it's a problem that can be managed with the right steps and documentation. Jack reviews upcoming court dates and makes sure we all have the same information about Shane's bail conditions and GPS monitoring. The meeting lasts 90 minutes, and by the end, I have a typed summary of the safety plan and everyone's contact information. Walking back to my car, I feel something I haven't felt in weeks, like maybe the system is actually working even if it's moving really slowly. I'm still processing everything from the conference when my phone rings 2 days later. Detective Williams says he needs to update me on the investigation, and I sit down hard on the couch before he even starts talking. The dumpster search recovered a purse and a cell phone belonging to a woman who was reported missing 3 weeks ago. Her family has been looking for her, posting flyers and organizing search parties, and now the forensics team is working to figure out exactly what happened to her. My hands go completely numb holding the phone, and I have to switch it to speaker because I'm afraid I'll drop it. Detective Williams keeps talking about evidence processing and timeline analysis, but all I can think about is that my kids saw something real and terrible, something connected to an actual missing person with a family searching for her. The detective says he'll keep me updated as they learn more and reminds me not to discuss details with anyone outside the legal team. After I hang up, I sit on the couch staring at nothing for 20 minutes, feeling like the ground just dropped out from under me. Within an hour, Lawrence calls, and I can tell from his tone he already knows about the purse and phone. He warns me that media outlets are starting to ask questions about the case because of the missing woman connection. He tells me not to talk to any reporters and to be ready for attention I didn't ask for. I immediately think about the kids and how to keep them from seeing news coverage or hearing other people talk about their dad. Lawrence suggests I alert the school and maybe limit their screen time for a while. I write down his advice in my notebook, the one I've been using to track everything, and add, "talk to the school counselor," to my growing list of tasks. The next day, Lawrence emails me about a preliminary hearing scheduled 2 weeks out. We meet at his office and he walks me through the witness list, which includes Christina Pierce, who will present Emery's forensic interview video. Lawrence explains the judge will review all the evidence and decide if there's enough to bind Shane over for trial on the serious charges. He's honest about what could go wrong, how defense lawyers challenge everything, how judges sometimes want more proof than what we have. I leave his office feeling both hopeful that we're moving forward and scared about what happens if the evidence isn't enough. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrives in my mailbox from the county courthouse. Inside is a motion filed by Dinah Cleary asking the judge to suppress Emery's statements. I read through the legal language and feel my face get hot with anger. They're arguing that Emery's words were forced out of him, that he's too young and traumatized to give reliable testimony, that the forensic interview wasn't done right. They want to throw out everything my son finally found the courage to say. I call Lawrence immediately and he tells me to take a breath. He explains that Christina Pierce's forensic interview followed exact protocols designed for exactly this kind of challenge. The video shows she never led Emery or put words in his mouth. Lawrence sounds confident the motion will be denied, but he warns me the hearing will be hard to sit through. That same week, Lucia Warren visits Melanie's school and meets with her teacher in the classroom after school lets out. The teacher pulls out a folder with behavior notes she's been keeping since the court incident. Lucia calls me later to summarize what she learned. Melanie startles at loud noises, has trouble focusing on assignments, looks tired most days like she's not sleeping well. The teacher created a quiet corner in the classroom where Melanie can take breaks when things feel too big. She's been really patient and hasn't pushed Melanie to explain what's going on at home. Lucia says the teacher's documentation will go in her report to show how all of this has affected both kids' daily lives. The following week, Harper works with Melanie on a safety script for court buildings. They practice identifying exits, doing breathing exercises when anxiety spikes, and bringing a comfort object that fits in a pocket. Melanie picks a small stuffed rabbit from Harper's toy basket, one that's soft and gray with floppy ears. Harper has her practice walking through an imaginary courthouse, finding the bathroom, locating the exit signs, holding the rabbit when her heart starts racing. Watching my 8-year-old practice coping skills for legal proceedings makes me feel proud and sad at the same time. She shouldn't need these skills, but I'm grateful she's learning them. That night, after the kids go to bed, I open my laptop and create a new spreadsheet. I list every expense related to this situation going back to the first court date. Therapy copays, gas for all the trips downtown, time off work that didn't get paid, the doorbell camera, new locks, the consultation fee for the first lawyer I talked to before the court-appointed one. I add dates and amounts in careful columns, color coding by category. Lawrence mentioned that restitution might be possible later if Shane gets convicted of the criminal charges. The detailed record-keeping gives me something concrete to control when everything else feels like chaos I can't manage. 2 days later, someone knocks on my door in the middle of the afternoon. I check the doorbell camera and see a man in khakis and a button-down shirt holding a clipboard. He knocks again and calls out that he's an investigator working for Shane's defense team, that he just wants to ask a few questions about Shane's relationship with the kids. I remember Lawrence's advice about not engaging with the defense. I call through the door that he needs to contact the prosecutor's office. Then I step back and watch through the camera as he writes something on his clipboard and walks away. My heart pounds hard for the next 20 minutes and I check every window lock twice. But I'm proud I held that line without opening the door or getting pulled into a conversation that could only hurt our case. 3 days later, I walk into the courthouse for the preliminary hearing and spot Lawrence standing near the metal detectors reviewing his notes. He gives me a quick nod and I follow him upstairs to the smaller courtroom where Shane already sits at the defense table next to Dinah. Shane's wearing a dress shirt that looks wrinkled and his jaw is tight as he watches me sit down behind Lawrence. The judge enters and calls the hearing to order, and Lawrence stands to address the admissibility of Emery's forensic interview. Dinah immediately objects, arguing that my 6-year-old was too traumatized to give reliable testimony and that the interview process was flawed. Lawrence counters by calling Christina to the stand. She walks to the witness box in a professional blazer and explains her credentials, her specialized training in forensic interviewing of child trauma victims, and the exact protocol she followed with Emery. She describes how the interview room was designed to be comfortable, how she used open-ended questions without leading him, how everything was recorded on video for exactly this purpose. Dinah cross-examines her aggressively, trying to suggest that Christina guided Emery's responses, but Christina stays calm and references specific timestamps on the video, showing she never put words in his mouth. The judge listens carefully, taking notes, and when Christina finishes testifying, he rules that the forensic interview meets the hearsay exception for child abuse cases, and will be admitted as evidence. Shane shifts in his seat looking angry, and Dinah objects again for the record, but the judge's decision stands. Lawrence calls a detective to the stand who walks through the physical evidence recovered from Shane's apartment and car. The detective explains that fiber samples from Shane's car trunk match the carpet material found in the dumpster, and that personal items recovered include a purse and cell phone belonging to the missing woman whose family reported her gone 3 weeks ago. He shows photographs of the evidence laid out on a table, each item tagged and documented. The detective describes how K-9 units alerted on the specific dumpster location that Emery identified, and how forensic teams processed the scene according to standard protocols. Dinah tries to poke holes in the chain of custody and questions whether the fibers really match, but the detective has clear documentation for every step. When the evidence presentation finishes, the judge reviews his notes for several minutes while everyone sits in tense silence. Then he announces he finds probable cause to bind Shane over on charges of tampering with physical evidence and child endangerment. My chest loosens slightly hearing those words, even though I know it's not murder charges yet. The judge schedules the case for arraignment in 2 weeks and asks if there are any bail modifications to consider. Lawrence stands and argues that Shane poses a significant witness intimidation risk based on the bribery attempts and threats documented in the family court proceedings. He requests tighter bail conditions, including a curfew and more frequent check-ins. Dinah objects, claiming Shane has complied with all existing conditions, but Lawrence points out that compliance is the minimum expectation. The judge agrees and modifies Shane's bail to include a 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew, twice weekly in-person check-ins at the probation office, and an alert system on his GPS monitor that will notify authorities immediately if he goes near our neighborhood or the kids' school. Each new restriction makes me breathe a little easier, even though Shane is still out there. I watch him leave the courtroom with Dinah, his face red and his hands clenched into fists. 2 days later, I received notice that CPS filed a motion to suspend Shane's custody rights entirely pending resolution of the criminal case. The motion cites the pending charges, the children's ongoing trauma treatment, and the risk of further harm if contact continues. I read through the legal language 3 times, hardly believing this might actually happen. That same afternoon, Lucia calls to tell me she filed a supporting brief recommending the family court adopt CPS's position. She explains that her independent investigation supports complete suspension of Shane's parental rights until the criminal case resolves and he completes substantial treatment. The hearing is set for next week, and I let myself hope that maybe we'll finally get real stability, instead of this constant fear. Thursday afternoon, I take Emery to his therapy session with Harper and sit in the waiting room while they work together. After 40 minutes, Harper opens the door and asks me to come in. Emery is standing near Harper's desk holding a sealed Pokemon pack, one he'd been saving in his backpack. He walks over to the small trash can in the corner and drops the pack inside. Harper asks if he's sure, and Emery nods, his voice quiet but clear when he says he doesn't want to count anymore. My eyes fill up watching him make this choice, knowing what those cards represented and what it means that he's letting them go. Harper catches my eye and gives a small nod, and I understand this is real progress even though it feels bittersweet. The next morning, a man named Russell from the DA's Victim Assistance Program calls and asks if I have time to meet. I arrange to see him during my lunch break, and he walks me through paperwork for an emergency grant that can cover security expenses. He's patient and kind, explaining each form and helping me gather the receipts for the lock changes and doorbell camera I installed. The grant isn't huge, but it covers those costs, and Russell's practical help makes me feel less alone in trying to navigate all these systems. He gives me his direct number and tells me to call if I need help accessing other resources. I thank him and head back to work, feeling like maybe there are people in the system who actually want to help. That evening while I'm making dinner, my phone rings and I see Detective Williams' name. I step into the hallway and answer, and his voice is serious when he tells me the forensic analysis is complete. Blood traces in Shane's car trunk match the missing woman's DNA, and the medical examiner ruled her death a homicide. The case is being transferred to the homicide unit for expanded investigation. I sit down hard on the kitchen floor, my back against the wall, trying to process that my children witnessed something even worse than I let myself imagine. Williams says they'll be in touch as the investigation continues, and I hang up feeling numb. A week later, Lawrence calls in the evening sounding urgent. Shane violated his curfew by 7 minutes, claiming car trouble, but the GPS data shows he was parked near a convenience store during that time. Lawrence already filed a notice of violation, and there's a hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. I rearrange my work schedule again and show up to watch the judge review the GPS printouts. Dinah argues it was a minor technical violation, that Shane's car really did have trouble starting, but Lawrence points out that 7 minutes parked at a store doesn't match that story. The judge looks stern and issues a warning that any further violations will result in immediate bail revocation. Shane leaves the courtroom looking furious, and I feel the tension sitting heavy in my shoulders. The following Tuesday, Melanie's school calls mid-morning. The counselor explains that Melanie had a panic attack during the fire drill, the loud alarm triggering her beyond what her coping skills could handle. I leave work immediately and drive to the school where I find Melanie in the counselor's office, her face blotchy from crying. I sign her out and we go home, and that afternoon I call Harper to report what happened. Harper adjusts Melanie's treatment plan to include more work on sensory triggers and loud noises. I remind myself this is data that helps us help her better, not a sign of failure. Thursday evening, I drive to a community center across town for a support group that Lawrence mentioned. The room has a circle of folding chairs and about 8 other parents, mostly mothers, dealing with custody issues involving abuse. I sit quietly at first, but when one woman shares her story about her ex manipulating their kids and threatening her through the court system, I start crying because it mirrors our situation so closely. After the meeting ends, she comes over and we exchange phone numbers, agreeing to text each other for support between meetings. Walking back to my car, I feel less isolated than I have in months, knowing there are other people who understand exactly what this is like. I attend the support group again the following Thursday, and share briefly about the criminal charges moving forward and the custody hearing coming up. The other parents nod with understanding, and one woman offers to text me the morning of court for encouragement. Walking to my car afterward, I feel steadier knowing I have people who get it without me having to explain everything. Lawrence calls 2 days later with news that Dinah reached out about a plea deal. She wants Shane to plead to lesser charges and avoid trial on the serious stuff. Lawrence tells me he's not accepting anything until the full autopsy report comes back, and they finish investigating everything. The waiting makes my stomach hurt, but I trust that Lawrence knows what he's doing and won't let Shane get off easy. 3 weeks pass with therapy appointments and work and trying to keep everything normal for the kids. Then Lawrence emails that family court scheduled the custody review hearing for next Tuesday. I request the morning off work and spend the weekend helping Melanie pick out clothes that make her feel brave and reminding Emery he doesn't have to talk to anyone if he doesn't want to. Tuesday morning arrives and I drive to the courthouse with both kids because Lucia wants them present even though they won't testify. We sit in the hallway outside the courtroom, and Melanie clutches her stuffed rabbit while Emery arranges his remaining Pokemon cards in a neat stack on the bench. Lucia arrives carrying a thick folder and gives me a small smile before heading into the courtroom. When we're called in, I hold both kids' hands and we sit behind the table on my side. The judge reviews paperwork for what feels like forever, while Shane's empty chair sits across the aisle because he's still in jail. Lucia stands and presents her recommendation for temporary sole legal and physical custody to me with no visitation for Shane. She references the pending criminal charges, the children's therapy reports from Harper, the CPS investigation findings, and the documented threats and bribery attempts. The judge asks Lucia several questions about the children's current functioning and whether they've expressed any desire for contact with their father. Lucia explains that neither child has asked to see or speak with Shane, and that Harper believes contact would be harmful at this stage. The judge flips through more papers, and I watch the clock tick past 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. My hands sweat, and Melanie squeezes my arm. Finally, the judge looks up and grants the order for temporary sole custody to me with no visitation. Relief floods through my whole body, and I feel my shoulders drop for the first time in months. The judge adds that Shane can have supervised therapeutic phone check-ins only if Harper determines it's appropriate and the children want it. We leave the courtroom, and I buy the kids ice cream even though it's only 11 in the morning. That afternoon, Harper texts asking if I can bring Emery in for an extra session tomorrow. I rearrange my schedule, and the next day, Emery sits with Harper working on something she calls a communication script. She explains that Emery is practicing what he would say to his dad if he ever wanted to talk someday. Harper emphasizes over and over that he never has to use these words, but having them ready gives him control. I watch through the observation window as Emery reads in his tiny voice about feeling scared and wanting to feel safe. My eyes fill up, and I'm proud and heartbroken at the same time. Thursday evening, I'm making dinner when my phone starts ringing with numbers I don't recognize. I ignore the first 3 calls, but then check the news on my laptop and see a local station aired a story about the missing woman case that mentions Shane's arrest. My stomach drops, and I immediately close all the blinds in the apartment. The kids notice and ask why we're closing everything, and I explain that some people are nosy, but they can't hurt us. I text Lawrence about the unwanted calls, and he responds within minutes telling me to keep a log and don't engage with any media. The calls continue for 2 more days before finally stopping. Lawrence emails the following Monday with an update that makes everything feel more real. The medical examiner's full autopsy report came back showing the woman died from a drug overdose. The evidence suggests Shane and another person hid her body after she died instead of calling for help. The charges get adjusted to tampering with physical evidence, abuse of a corpse, and they're reviewing a delivery charge related to the drugs. It's not the murder charge some people expected, but Lawrence explains this reflects what the evidence can actually prove in court. 2 days later, Lawrence sends another email with a document attached. He filed formal charges of child endangerment and witness intimidation, based on what Emery and Melanie saw, and Shane's bribery attempts with the cash envelopes. Seeing these charges in writing validates that what Shane did to our family matters to the legal system. I print the document and put it in my growing file of court papers. Wednesday evening, I'm helping Melanie with homework when my phone buzzes with an alert from the monitoring system. Shane's GPS pinged near our apartment complex. My hands start shaking, and I immediately call Lawrence, who answers on the second ring. He tells me he's filing for a bail revocation hearing right now, and I should stay inside with doors locked. I check the doorbell camera every few minutes for the next hour. Lawrence calls back saying Dinah claims it was a GPS glitch, and Shane was across town. The hearing gets scheduled for 3 days out, and I barely sleep those nights, checking the camera constantly and jumping at every sound. Saturday morning arrives, and I drive to the courthouse alone because I don't want the kids there for this. The prosecution presents GPS data showing Shane was within 2 blocks of our home for 40 minutes with no reason to be in that area. Dinah argues about technical errors and claims Shane's car broke down, but the data doesn't match that story. The judge reviews the printouts, and I watch his face get stern. He revokes bail and orders Shane remanded to custody pending trial. 2 officers walk Shane out in handcuffs, and he glares at me as he passes. I finally exhale all the way down to my toes. That afternoon, I drive to look at apartments in a different neighborhood. The property manager shows me a smaller 2-bedroom with better security, and it's closer to the kids' school. The rent is slightly less, which helps with my reduced work hours. I sign the lease that evening and spend the next week packing boxes after the kids fall asleep. I label each box carefully and sort through our stuff, deciding what we actually need. Moving again makes me sad, but having a fresh start where Shane doesn't know the address feels like breathing easier. The family court hearing happens 2 weeks after Shane gets locked up. I sit in the same courtroom where everything fell apart months ago, but this time the judge reviews all the evidence methodically. The criminal charges are documented in the file. The therapy reports from Harper sit on the bench. Lucia Warren presents her recommendation for sole custody with a 6-month review. The judge reads through everything twice, making notes, and then looks up at me. She grants temporary sole legal and physical custody effective immediately. Any future contact with Shane depends on treatment completion, criminal case resolution, and therapeutic recommendations. It's not permanent protection, but it's real ground under my feet. I walk out with the signed order in my hands and put it in a plastic sleeve to keep it safe. My phone buzzes 3 days later while I'm making dinner. Harper's text makes me stop stirring the pasta. Melanie slept through the entire night without nightmares for the first time since the courtroom incident. I stare at the message and feel something loosen in my chest. At our next therapy session, Melanie sits on Harper's couch and reports proudly that she used her breathing exercises when she woke up scared and put herself back to sleep. I hug her tight and tell her how brave she is. Harper smiles and adds a gold star to Melanie's progress chart. The fragile hope feels almost too delicate to acknowledge, but I let myself feel it anyway. Emery surprises me the following week during his session. He asks Harper if he can donate some of his Pokemon cards to the therapy office toy collection for other kids who might need them. Harper brings out the cards and they spread them on the floor together. Emery carefully chooses which ones to keep and which ones to give away. Harper creates a small ritual where Emery places each donated card in a special box and says what he hopes it brings another kid. Watching him reclaim choice and agency around something that was used to control him makes my throat tight. He's taking back what Shane tried to steal. Lawrence emails me on a Monday morning with an update about the plea negotiations. Shane's lawyer is pushing hard for a deal on the tampering and endangerment charges because they want to avoid trial on the witness intimidation counts. Lawrence thinks they'll likely reach an agreement on some charges while taking others to trial. He's honest that justice won't be perfect or complete. I write back that I understand and I'm learning to accept whatever outcome protects my kids. The legal system moves slow and messy, but at least it's moving. I meet with my HR representative on Thursday afternoon in her small office. We review my attendance records and the documentation from all the court dates and appointments. She's sympathetic and we work out a reduced hours arrangement that lets me keep my job and health insurance while having flexibility for ongoing therapy sessions and hearings. It's not ideal financially, but it's sustainable. My boss even mentions a possible promotion to a remote position next year that would give me more control over my schedule. I thank them both and feel grateful to have employers who understand. Moving day arrives on a Saturday morning and the kids are actually excited. We drive to the new apartment with boxes packed in my car. Melanie and Emery help pick out new curtains for their shared bedroom at the discount store. Melanie chooses ones with stars, and Emery picks dinosaurs, and we decide to hang both sets on different walls. I install a second deadbolt on the front door myself using a drill I borrowed from our old neighbor. I set up a cheap sound machine in their room to help with sleep. The apartment is smaller than our last place, but it's ours, and nobody scary knows where we live. I label each box as we unpack, and the kids arrange their toys on new shelves. The first night in our new place feels strange and quiet. Emery arranges his remaining Pokemon cards on his dresser in careful rows. He leaves one pack unopened and tells me it's a reminder of his choice to speak up. He sleeps with his door cracked open and the hallway light on. I check on both kids twice before bed, standing in their doorway watching their peaceful faces. Melanie's breathing is steady and even. Emery's hand curls around his blanket edge. I feel cautiously hopeful for the first time in months. I make myself tea and sit in our new living room on the secondhand couch. The fridge calendar already has court dates written in different colored markers. I set phone reminders so nothing gets missed. We're not done with the legal process because there's still a trial ahead, more therapy sessions, and the 6-month custody review. But tonight we're safe. The kids are healing slowly. We have a plan that extends into next month and the month after that. I sip my tea and let myself feel okay without waiting for something bad to happen.